Welcome to Inside Imaginary Realism, an art show about visionary art and beyond. I'm Bonny Hut and we bring you this new mini-series. Each week we will be asking new and different questions of our artists living in Australia. We will be introducing art genres occasionally overlooked by the mainstream art world, now regaining recognition.
What are your favourite art pieces and why?
My favourite is angelic induction, and I think it's because of the way I want to paint, and I've been chasing this look in my paintings, and angelic induction, I achieved it. I got it as close as I've gotten so far, you know. I want to go further with that. And it's quite a big piece, and it's almost my last painting, so I'm quite happy about that. I think finally I'm on to where I want to go, where I want to take my art, where the subject matter is, but also the style of what I want to paint. Yeah.
Okay, I have a definite piece that is my favourite, and it's actually of my wife, and she's walking through the forest, her hair's flying up in amongst all the leaves, and she's in this dreamlike state with her hands holding all these mushrooms. Now, when I painted that, I had no idea. She told me later on that back in New Zealand when she was a child, she used to collect mushrooms in the forest with her aunties, and there was this strange sort of connection there that I had no idea of the story previously. Her grandfather, being a Maori elder from New Zealand, saw the work and was thrown back and blessed it. It was just a very powerful piece, so I think that's my favourite. It's called The Gathering.
It changes over time. I often find myself uncomfortable with previous artworks. There's a few though that I still find interesting or valuable in that they were turning points. So there was one that was part of this first frieze I did where I was doing a confrontational self-portrait in front of a mirror, and certain things happened with my real life that mirrored the work, and I found that was pretty raw, that work, and so I like the rawness of that and how, you know, it predicted a tic allergy that I had which went crazy in front of a mirror. So I really like that work because it was that turning point when I was about to give up, and it was do or die. Oh, not exactly, I nearly died with the tic. But it was either do it or give it up. And so for me, that's an important point. Time.
I think they're behind me. So you have the cosmic mother birthing the rainbow body into form. This one for me is an epic. Feels like an epic adventure. It's something that I've been working on for a couple of years, and it really just explains the wholeness of like a cosmic creational process, which is about developing full potential for the human species on this planet. So it's also harnesses cosmic consciousness. So this is definitely one of my favourite pieces. I've really enjoyed being stretched in every way to be able to birth it. So, and also I think probably this one here, because it talks about the process of the honey in the heart. So it's about that spiritual nectar that we develop through the process of experiencing bliss.
Or this one here. Just because it's my latest one, and the latest one is always my favourite one because it's the one I've been putting all my devotion into. Why? Because it's relevant to my current life journey, path and unfolding, and I like the colour.
My art pieces that I created, I always like the one that I've just finished, but I would have to say at the moment my two favourite ones are this one here, which is, I've done that a few years ago. It's quite a large oil painting. That's a print there. It's called Maya, Goddess of the Spring, and to me it represents the rebirth after winter, and it's symbolic for a lot of the process that my life has gone through. And I just really like it. It just worked out really good. And my other piece that I really like is one that's called The Blue-Eyed Fox, and that is a portrait of a very dear person in my life, and I put a lot of love into that painting, and it shows for me. So yeah, those are my favourite ones.
I don't know if I have a favourite, but there's one that I do really love, and that is agoraphobia. And that to me says everything in one art piece, and it's how I want to paint, and it's realism. And in this painting, it's a man behind doors, and he's looking out those doors knowing one day he's going to go out, and it says everything. And I think that is what I love in a painting, that the painting itself tells the story, and I think that's why that's my favourite.
Two of my favorite art pieces are generally the last two that I just made. That's one answer that I always like to use. But right now this room is filled with many of my favorite art pieces. One of them specifically is this one called Blessed Nest, and this one's called Organic Mechanics. But what makes them my favorite is that they were made at a time when I was taking a lot of risk and really committing myself as a photographer and an artist. So besides the fact that they encapsulate fully what I'm trying to do with the medium, they have a lot of personal flavor in there that I always recognize.
I feel slightly dissatisfied with everything that I make. I think that's just the way that I am, but I think that's just the way that most artists are, is that we're always wanting to be better. So I don't think anything that I've ever made has ever been finished. So I've never been entirely satisfied with anything that I've made. But at the same point in time, I know that I am a work in progress, and so is my art. And in overall pieces, once the piece is done, I really don't care about it that much. It's more to do with the process. So the act of it growing as I'm watching it, often I feel like it's not me that's making it, it's coming from within. So it's really hard for me to pick any two pieces, because they really, when they're done. I'm just more excited about the next one.
Well, a lot of artists will tell you that their most recent works are their favourite. I would say I'm pretty similar in that regard, because of course your most recent works, you've progressed on the works you've done before, and I'm busy doing a series of carnival styled work with a carnival with a bit of a twist. So I'd have to say my carnival pieces, What You Ponder, and also repainting the script, they're probably my favourite pieces at the moment.
Where did you learn to paint, draw, sculpt, etc.?
I'm self-taught. I just looked at the world, looked at the art around me, and worked out how it was done, and kept practicing, and taught myself how to teach myself how to do art.
I wouldn't call myself self-taught, I'd call myself self-directed. And even though I went to uni, I don't feel like I was taught at uni. It was more of an isolation ceremony, except for the wonderful fellow students that were there. So yeah, I think it's a lot. I think to do anything with energy, you have to be self-directed to some degree.
Well, I used to sculpt and paint when I was a kid. Not paint, draw. with pencil, and then I was pushed into science because I had an intellect and I always wanted to just paint, so I ended up just taking it up and getting hints from friends. I had very little formal training with oil anyhow, and just figured it out as I went. Did a little course here and there, that's it.
I've learned in a lot of places. I learned off friends in the early days, and then I gave art up for quite a while, and my daughter actually came forward and said, "Oh, I'd like to go and learn how to draw." So we went and found Paddington Art School, where we went to for quite a while. I then went to Sydney Art Station, another art class in Sydney, but I wound up at Julian Ashton's, which is the absolute classic of old school painting. It's fantastic. It's been there for over 100 years. All the easels are heritage listed and so forth. It's the best.
Yeah, well, I came straight out of high school back in the 90s and went into art college in Hornsby, and it was 2 years of amazing practical experience. Not so much bombardment of theory, although I love theory. We had 9 subjects of art. It was fantastic, everything. We had a chance to express ourselves and discover who we were, which direction we wanted to go, and get guidance on actual skills. And that's where my main training was. I've since then learned from other artists locally, constantly learning from other artists, inspired by many around the world. So always learning.
I learnt when I was very young. I learnt through self-inquiry and the encouragement of my family. Sitting at the dining room table with my sister and just really learning how to draw, learning how to observe nature, and I just enjoyed it from such an early age. So this is something that was always encouraged in my household and that I have developed quite consciously ever since then.
Well, I'm a self-taught artist, and for many years I've always dabbled in drawing, doing my own thing, but never professionally and never really putting my energies into it. And it's only in the last few years that I have started to do that, and I think I've just taught myself and just learnt from other people and really being observant. It's tough, very tough.
Probably it's such a big question. It's a long progression. I guess it was from kindergarten going on to copying comic books, learning from my father a little bit, getting interested in manga art, all kinds of things, and then eventually going to university, studying painting, fine art, finishing a course, travelling to Europe and learning with some artists in Vienna, and yeah, it's kind of an ongoing project of learning.
I learned to photograph in Mexico City in 1997. I grew up in Mexico. It was in my second year of my high schooling that I learned to photograph. Photography class provided a much needed creative break to some of the dull droning and mind control that I was experiencing in my other classes. You see, the thing that creativity does is that it gives us an outlet to be able to bring forth our true nature. And this is something that was much more in alignment with me than debating world finances or solving a math equation.
When I was very young, I had a really difficult time communicating with people around me. And as a child, I was very introverted. And I found that drawing, and I'm talking very young, like 4 or 5, I found that drawing was a really good way for me to communicate my ideas and express the way that I saw the world. And also, it was my way of being included in a larger group, because they could look at my artwork and go, wow, that's great. And that, to me, inspired me to continue working. But it also gave me an opportunity where I didn't need to be as boisterous and loud and competitive, and I could still be included.
Can you tell us something about your studio?
I think my studio is it's regulated, it's organised to some extent. I have my computer there, but I think the computer's taken the place of... I looked at Francis Bacon's studio once and there's pictures stuck everywhere. Well, I've got that, but they're all in my computer, so it cleans the place up a lot. It's under my house. I have nature straight out the door. Lyrebirds come and do poos on my front step, which I really like. And it's a great space to be. It's my private space. Nobody else goes there.
I'm a bit scattered when it comes to studio space. I have a small space at home with too many distractions, so I tend to jump from studio to studio, especially Graeme's, and there's about 3 or 4 others that I have work strewn amongst their houses, and it just makes it interesting to work in different spaces all the time, pick up different energies and environments. So I'm a bit of a nomad in the studio spaces.
I've always worked from home. Generally speaking, I just pull up any nook or cranny that I'm inspired to use. Often it's in the kitchen or where is a main, flow of the house. I have a huge leather satchel that's full of all my art goodies, and I kind of just drag that around wherever I go if I paint outside or whatever. In terms of my tattooing, though, that's more, I travel to do that and go to different venues, so that's just a little briefcase that I bring along with me and create the environment required when I arrive.
Yeah, I finally got my studio after many years of painting in my lounge room, and it was the best room, I have to admit, my lounge room. But my studio is my space. There are no rules in my studio, except my rules, and I can just close the door and leave off where I left it and go back the next day and pick up from where I left off, and it's just a brilliant feeling to have my space. Very airy and beautiful too. And I overlook the Kuringa National Park, which is an inspiration.
The studio is really a veranda, and it's a small space, and so it's fairly cramped, and it's not an official studio. So I'm used to that, so I'm not complaining. It's just small. So the thing is, I just find, going for walks, you're thinking about things all the time, outside, inside, whatever, in conversations. So yeah, I definitely don't have this big studio space where you can really stand back. If I stand back, I usually fall over something.
For as long as I can remember, I've always had a special space for me to work in, and that space has changed as my passions have changed and my mediums and techniques have changed. At the moment, I like to imagine that it's the walls of my imagination, that I've decorated it with all of the things that drive me and move me forward. And I've got a lot of other artists' work on my walls as well. And when I finish something, it tends to hang for a while on my own wall, and I look at it while I'm making new pieces, so that way I can remind myself that I'm always going forward.
I work from home predominantly, and I've got a few different workspaces on my property. At the back of my property, I've got a building construction workshop area that consists of about 7 small little rooms. It's very much like a labyrinth. It's a very interesting construction. And I do a lot of my phase 1 building, categorizing, painting, these sorts of things out there. I've just converted one of my larger bedrooms inside as one of my studios that I use to actually assemble, and I work under the lights in there. And I've also got a study space that's got all my my electronics, my computer, my printers, my pre and post-production process happens in there. So I've got a few different spaces, and they're all at my home.
My studio is on top of a mountain in my home on in a cooperative called Mora Mora. So my lounge room is my studio. I create next to my fireplace with the music. It's completely integrated into my living space. So I feel like I live and breathe my creative process in my home, and I really enjoy that space and that holistic approach.
I don't have a studio, I just paint at home, in my kitchen, in my lounge room. Yeah. Music on in the background, cat sitting by my side, sometimes by an open fire. I try to paint with the light of the morning when the sun comes in the window. And I will often paint daily, usually in the mornings when my dreaminess is still fresh.
What are you trying to express through your work?
That's a bit of a trick question because what initially inspires me to do a painting to explore a spiritual vision and the meaning contained within it is certainly not what other people get out of my art. And I'm well aware that what I'm exploring and learning from the process is not what I'm going to end up conveying to others. But I do take endless delight in their reactions to what I've created in the end.
I have a lot of environmental and cultural passions. I feel that I love tradition. I love hearing stories that come from different cultures. I love really intrinsic patterns. I love the history of artwork. I love the history of patterns and culture. So I tend to regurgitate all of this knowledge that I'm passionately seeking, and then I try to interpret that into artwork, and it comes out in a way often where there's a story behind it, there's a narrative, and while I'm drawing, I'm absorbing that narrative, that story, and trying to work out what it is that is inspiring me, and I'm growing as I'm doing it. So most of my works actually have a fairly big backstory to them, and the reason why is because I feel like I just need to be able to grow as a person, and that's why it gets made.
I think, although I have many different styles, to me my work always comes back to expressing my perception of the beauty of life. Everything, no matter what style, what medium that I do, there's an element to it which is just, it's so beautiful. I want to show you, the viewer, how I see the beauty in a way that you can understand, that's hard to articulate other than in a visual format.
I believe art is, for me, it's about sharing this belief that we are all one, sharing this belief that nature, divinity and humanity are connected, and this idea that love is the fabric of the universe. That's kind of big stuff, but that's what I like to think about and explore.
We trust that you enjoyed this week's program. Inside Imaginary Realism was brought to you by Metro Television. Please see the Visionary Art Network Australia's website to see more art and artists. visionaryart.net.au. The Department of Communication intend to take community television off-air Australia-wide. Please go to Channel 31's website at c31.org.au and join the campaign to keep us on air.